Uh, Smoother video. What? This is new. Start match, please. Thank you. Mostly discussing, not just the Lotus, but what I look for in a newer map. So I see a map for the first time. What are things I'm looking for? What are things I key in on? What do I do first? What do I do second? Just kind of the priority order for what I'm looking for on each site, on defense, on attack. Those are the kind of the primary things, and we're going to go ahead and start it. And we're going to look first at the map overall as soon as it loads in. Small indie company. There we go. And we're going to give me all the things. And there we go. And let's see. So let's start the. Actually, no, we're not going to start yet, but we will go and pause. All right, so we're going to look at the map, just kind of get an idea for what we're looking at, how many bomb sites there are, what role are you playing on the map? Like, are you a controller main? Are you a duelist? Are you an initiator? Do you get info? Those sorts of things. Those are very important to how you can look at the map. And then just walk the map, kind of get an idea for things like if you're on B site and you hear, somebody's on A site, how long does it take for you to get from B to C, from B to A, because those things are very important. So if you're on C site, you cleared site, and you heard, there's a comm that somebody's on B site, how long do you have to get from like back site if you wanted to push here without them knowing? So you can get here and kind of walk. Those are the internal clocks I look for, and things people call game sense, right? You just have a sense for, if there's somebody on this part of the map, how long does it take to get to here or there? Very important things. And then after you walk the map, get an idea for how to get from C link up into heaven. What the and on that note, just what are things called? Like this, I call it heaven. Some people might call it upper B. You just get an idea for the map. They do a pretty good job of naming things pretty well. And a lot of players that I see in ranked or higher ranks do call them by these things. You'll occasionally see things that are different. Like on Split, for example, I call that mid area where attackers start, I call it market. Some people call it ramen. Just kind of get an idea for what things are called. and it'll help you and your team by knowing what they're calling and also how to come to them if there's information there. And then once you kind of get a hold of the map, you're going to want to start on one site, and we'll start looking from a defensive perspective, and then we'll work our way over. I personally like to play on C. And then when you're looking at a site, you want to kind of get an idea of where's the choke point. So you're playing on C site. If the attackers are attacking C site, where do they have to kind of funnel in? And we kind of get an idea for that by looking at this area. It's pretty clear that you can, if you put a smoke down on this spot, it smokes the entire entrance. If you're on attack side and you're trying to get in here, like you have to get through this. And if it's smoked off, you can't do much. You have to basically just fight through smoke and you're going in blind. And then once you kind of figure out where the choke point is, this is kind of where you fight, unless you're pushing, but we'll get to that later. But this is what you're holding. Your main priority is stop them from getting through the choke. And the way you do that is you're either holding a hold angle or an off angle. This would be kind of a holding angle. This is like a single line. If I shoot here, I can get out quickly. An off angle would be something like they're not expecting somebody to be on the edge here, because why would anybody be standing right out in the open? So this would be considered maybe an off angle. I wouldn't recommend it because you're kind of stuck. You're good for one and you're dead, but it could be considered that. This may also be called an off angle because it is kind of a headshot angle. And a headshot angle is obviously where you can only see the player's head. And then some other off angles might be, just sitting up here. If they turn the corner and you shoot here, then they're not looking up here. This kind of goes into an attacker. We'll get into it, but it goes into scaling. Like, where do you expect people to be first? You're not looking at this to shoot somebody. You're looking, close corner, this box, et cetera, et cetera. And then first point of contact. So this is something we'll end the first game phase. But if you look here, this is as close as I can get at the start of the round. And on the attacker side, this is as close they can get on the start of the round. So if you were both to run as fast as you could from here to C site and from B site to there, where's the first place you're going to be able to possibly see somebody? So if I were on defense, we'll end the first game phase. This is where I would look for somebody. This is the very first point of contact. And this goes in with crosshair placement. You hear every pro or up-and-comer talk about what's the most important thing, to get good. Crosshair placement is huge because, where your crosshair sits is very important. And, once I start at the beginning, like my crosshair is already at head level and it's at this angle. I don't have to move anywhere. I could just literally tap here. If somebody walks out, they're getting hit in the head. And on a attacker side, I'll save attacker side. But on defense, C site, this is where I'm expecting the first point of contact if I'm pushing. Otherwise, I'm basically just waiting on site, and I'm playing one of those hold angles or off angles. Okay, and let's go take a look at B, and we're gonna, keep in mind when you're going from site to site, how long does it take me to get here? How long do I have to rotate if, worst case scenario, they're on A and I have to go all the way across the map? Like, if you're getting info that you have to go across to A, then you better get your running boots on. And then the best paths to rotate. So if I'm going from here to B site, best path would be going through to B. But if I'm trying to rotate from C site to A site, I might need to consider, if somebody's lurking B, how do I avoid that to keep myself safe, to give my team the best positioning? So if somebody's just left B site and B site's open and we're sure they're A, to avoid just making yourself an easy kill with your knife out, run through spawn. Keep track of where the best ways to get to your team safely is, so that you can, best support your team. And then, worst case scenario, if they say, hey, no more noise A, they kind of left, you can then support B site from heaven or from upper, or go all the way back to A. Whatever the case, those are things that I consider when I'm first starting out, when I'm looking at the map. And then from A site or C site, we already kind of looked at some of those angles you can choose. From B site, some of the things I might look at, again, going to the first point of contact. This is the first point of contact. I'm not going to be able to push here because this puts me in an awkward position. But I might, kind of press for this angle, use a dart, see if they're close, so on and so forth. And then if I'm not going for a pushing angle, you're going to look for where to kind of hold this choke point. Goes back to the first point I made of looking for the choke point of your site. This is the only way they can get in without, flanking or getting through one of the other sites. One other angle might be heaven. And then the last angle you'll probably see is somebody playing this breakable door and, just holding the cross. And then we'll break this door, neat little thing. And we'll look at A site. So A site, your attackers are going to be coming from over here. And then the first point of contact is probably them walking out right here. So on the attacker side, or I'm sorry, on the defensive side, you could hold an angle like this. This makes it kind of easy to be a second person on A site and play in between here and B site. Or you can play this angle here, or you can play in that little connector by the door and just break it immediately to help your team. You can play in deep sight like a rat. We don't do that. No rats here. Is cute little rat in here? No, they're not. Okay, never mind. Or you can play in this door room. Some people like to play this door. It's extremely loud. I think they have reduced it by half, and it's still extremely loud. Places you can play in here, it gets kind of weird. You have nothing but really an off angle, because playing from this angle really puts you in a bad spot if they immediately push here. So if you're not having this covered very well and you're playing from this, you're really getting pinched at the beginning of the round. So playing in this room, playing, a close angle, or playing behind this tree might be good, but I wouldn't obviously go through this because it is spammable. So if you get spammed out, you're not really helping very much. And then that is all 3 sites. And does anybody have questions about the defensive side? And I'm going to move on to the offensive side and maybe get into some, quirks about different parts of the map outside of the norms, if we have time. Nobody? Okay. I guess I'll just go over here. Alrighty. Oh, just a random dude is typing. He says I look fine. Cam's not on, but thank you. No, I'm good. Perfect. All right, so attacker side. Let us end the. Let me swap teams. Let's see what happens here. I haven't played too much with that. Aha, nice. All right, so attack side. One of the main things one of the first things we talked about was first points of contact. And from the attacker side, on C site, for example, hello. One of the first things you'll see is maybe here. So the reason I say maybe is the fastest point you can run out here and see this person on C site could have already walked out without having a chance to see. And so they could have walked out mound, they could walk behind this box. So as an attacker, you have to be aware of where the first point they could possibly be. From defensive side, this is as close as they can get, but as a defender, you can get out to more places than just that. They can't run up to this close corner. So, turn your headphones up, have that prepared. So if you hear noise, they could be pushed up into this little corner. But as an attacker, you're basically holding this angle. Maybe your teammate has a flash, maybe you dart. I doubt you use the dart this early, but you can dart for mound if they're constantly pushing up on you. And then you have your C site. And then before we get to, we don't talk about that in this click. On the B site, the first points of contact here are obviously when I talked about, as this defender pushing, you're basically, as an attacker, you're countering the defense. As much as the defense is countering your push, as an attacker, you're doing very much the same of countering where they could possibly be to give yourself the best angles and the best chances to fight. So as a defender, they could walk out. And then when you're attacking, you basically have to clear all of those things before you can actually go in. And then on A site, This one's a bit important. So as an attacker, you're very closed off before you can see them. So they can basically see this right off the bat. So you have to get all the way out there before you can even start the engagements. So by the time you're coming out here, they're already looking at this angle. Your first angle is going to be right here. Then your second angle is going to be way up there. And then they could be, pushed up by the door as well. And another thing to keep in mind is the defense, if they know you're coming this way or, any chance you come this way, they can throw utility right off the bat onto this little opening. So as an attacker, you have to be aware of, holding for pushes and just waiting out utility at the beginning of the round. All right, so let's go through, actually, probably makes more sense to start on A site, doesn't it? All right, so things to think about on A if you're pushing it. Obviously, like I said, you wait out the utility that gets brought out right at the beginning, and then you want to maybe take away the first angles. Something some people do is put an Astra star here and return it. So when you return an Astra star, it gives you the smoke bubble for a fraction of the time. I think it's 2 or 3 seconds. So if you take away the smoke bubble, you can walk out and not be seen. And now when that smoke goes down, you have people peeking this angle and this angle. And if that door's not broken, you can kind of give them multiple options to shoot or use utility to push the site. A is kind of a hard site because you do have to take this long bit of space, before you can even contest the site, which makes it kind of difficult to go in before the rest of the team rotates. So it's you kind of have to slow play a little bit. And then you have to decide once you're here, a good thing that people like to do is split up. Obviously you don't want to all go down one way and, just run into each other and, line up for getting opt all 5 in a row. Is have some people go main and then some people maybe go through the door. You have 2 people go in, you have one person take the close angle, and then maybe a second person that's ready to follow up and swing out wider than the first person. And then as you scale in, you have the site. You maybe do a dart that clears out this little tube. You have maybe a dart that goes to this back corner if you're afraid somebody's back there. In this corner here, you could be playing back here. As a defense, I would not recommend going back here, but it could be there. And then from here, taking a site in dry like this where you don't have anything, but your gun, highly unrecommended. So by the time you get to this point, you're going to start considering smokes. And as an offense, like I said, you're going to want to counter what the defense is doing, right? So if you're on defense and you normally play the top of the stairs, maybe you put your smoke on stairs, so you don't have to worry about that angle anymore. They would have to walk out of the smoke before they can start challenging, or maybe you smoke off. If one of the times you played and they were inside of hut, you smoke off the hut. So you smoke these 2 areas, and now all your team is having to do is challenge these angles close by, and it really limits things. So it makes it a lot easier to push into site. All right. We have the B site. Oh, actually, let's talk about bomb plants too. So we have the bomb. Where do you plant here? Your first reaction is, closest point possible here. What is considered a default plant? What's considered a safe plant? Then you kind of get into if your team is playing a certain way and you have somebody that's lurked all the way back here and maybe you want to plant out here in the open for that person because you have that space taken. Maybe. What I like to think is consider what your default is and consider what's safe. This is considered a safe plant. And why is it safe? Because by the time you've taken the site, you've already granted this space and the entry space. So this is your safe plant because the only way that you can die is if somebody pushes here or somebody pushes through the space you've already cleared. This is spammable, so that's kind of something to also consider. But by the time they're spamming here, hopefully you have teammates that are able to cover you and you can plan out there. A default plant that I've seen a lot is somewhere out here. This is somewhat safe. You still have some space up here, but after you plant, you can play post plant from multiple angles. From this angle, you can't. It's the same reason that it's easy to plant here, it makes it just as hard to protect this spot too, because it's so cut off from everything. But if you plant out here, you can protect it from tree, you can protect it from, over here. You can play backside in this corner. You can do tons of things with that spot, but back here, there's not much you can do. So that's your difference between what a safe plant and what a default plant would be. If you have the opportunity, go for default more than safe. If you feel like there's a lot of pressure and the time's getting low, that's when you might consider a safe plant. All right. For B site, like I've already mentioned, kind of first point of contact, clearing these things out. As you're taking the site, again, you're going to want to counter whatever the defense is doing. I'm expecting somebody here. I'm expecting somebody there. I'm expecting somebody there. Like you have expectations going into a site, and then what you're going to want to do is limit what they can do. If I'm a brimstone, I'm smoking these 3 spots. Once I smoke all those spots, the only way somebody can contest the site is if they're spamming, they're using counter utility, they're flashing as you're walking in, all those sorts of things. And that's kind of the name of the game, is just trying to keep you out of the choke point. But if you smoke off all the angles from where they could be standing, you can get through the choke point. Plants for B site, you're going to have what I've seen as kind of a default is out in the open here. And then maybe the safe plant is here because you can't be seen from this angle. Somebody would have to walk out pretty far to see you from this angle. And then the only real big danger is somebody walking out here. But again, if you have sight and you have teammates, they have to walk out pretty far for you to get out here. And then as a post plant, unless you've pushed one of these angles out, the only way you can protect that is from here. So it's kind of dangerous to plant there in the sense that when they come to retake the site, they know all they're fighting is this while they defuse. Okay. And then we have the C site. This is my favorite site to hit and to defend. You have your first angle, you're basically holding that, and then you're assuming somebody pushed out. Somebody's behind you. Kill him. Sometimes people will spam this box here, and you're basically just going for whoever's crouching or standing up in the spot. And then the fun begins. So when you turn this corner, you have so many angles to clear. You have this first angle, which is basically just holding here. I personally would never hold this angle, but it's an angle I always look at when I first turn the corner because it's the easiest to get without being seen anywhere else. And this is what's called scaling. So when you're scaling, you're basically clearing each angle one at a time to limit yourself from however many angles. You don't pop swing this as an attacker because you're basically opening yourself up to multiple angles where they can shoot from. And if there's multiple people playing on the site, you're asking to get shot, right? So you want to basically clear each one and you want to scale through the site. So they could be here, you're clearing that, you're playing here, you turn this angle, they could be, back by this wall, and you're basically just jiggling everything. And this is assuming you don't have any smokes, right? So again, when I'm smoking as, a brim or whatever, I'm going to smoke off waterfall and maybe the back of sight. And what I've seen a lot of people do is take these fights and maybe put in some utility to clear out the back there. And you're basically just going to take sight, swing around, and you're going to look for your plants. And then hopefully this is smoked off and this is smoked off. And now you have the site. The plants that I would do for C site, this is your safe plant. Oh my God, they're everywhere. This is your default plant. The reason this is the default plant is because it's most in the open and is so easy to defend the plant after for a post plant. That kind of gives the basics for what I would do for Lotus. For a post plant, you might play, if this stays smoked, you can kind of play a little over this wall. Expect people here. This is kind of a really hard place to play. I don't recommend staying here as much as I might do that myself. But most of my team normally exits out, and I'm just kind of the last one on site anyways, so not a big deal. Before we get into any other cool things about the site or about the map, does anybody have any questions about attacking? Is this an op map? Good question. So, yes. What I would consider an op map is how many long angles are there and does holding them hold value? So, this is the perfect example of holding this angle with an op. Somebody can boost up there, but how many angles are there? And if I were to hold this angle all round, do I provide benefit for my team? The answer is obviously yes, because you can hold the entire C site, assuming everybody else does their job on B and A. You can hold this all round and hold value. If you get pushed off, you have multiple long angles that you can hold after the fact, kind of back here or this angle back here. But the operator holds big value because you have a lot of long angles to hold. Uh, don't do it on B. You can, but just don't. And then this extremely long angle of holding A. This will probably be the first thing to get smoked out, but it's easy to hold early, and then you can hold this closer one later in the day or later in the round. If you're rotating from C to A and you have time, you can get here. If they've pushed door, you can get here. Like there's so many things you can do with an operator in this map. Absolutely an op map. And the same goes for an attack side. You typically try not to op on attack, but if we're getting tired of getting ops and you're just going to take the fight, boom. The first points of contact already, and kind of where the operas are going to be, and you get the peeker's advantage. Hopefully that answers your question. Does anybody else have any other questions? My face when no questions. What are some characters you like of each category, attack or defense? All right, so team comps. I love Astra for a controller. Main reason, this spot right here is massively easily to hold as Astra. You basically put a star right here and you use the suck, and then you combo it with some damaging utility like Raise Nade. Extremely easy for people that aren't expecting it. So basically, you don't maybe do it the first round. You maybe do it like the fourth or fifth round, and you start just doing things. Another character I would love to see on this map is Breach. I suck at Breach, but I hate playing against Breach on this map. So same thing as with the Astra. A Breach stun right here. You can easily throw a flashbang through this wall. It makes it taking this space on defense so much easier. And then in reverse, if you have Breach on this side, you stun that angle, and then you flash through this wall, and now you can take this space. So that is controller. We have the duelist. We have an initiator, a sentinel. I like. Sage is good. I think Killjoy is probably just as good. Sage is in a pretty good spot with utility, being able to resurrect and slow and wall, those sorts of things. Very large value. I could see people playing Cypher. I just think Killjoy and Sage provide more value for the team. So that's 4. And then you have your flex. I play KO. I love KO right now. I love where he's at with his flashbangs and info utility. Another info character, Fade, would be really good. Fade is just a great agent right now with the Prowlers and the Eye. The Suck also, for the same reasons on A site in that entry. But just great value overall. What other agents would be good here? I like Brim. I don't love Brim on this map. I'd much rather have an Astra. Omen's good, just because of the ability to teleport from site to site. It makes clutch rounds very doable with Omen. Other duelists on attack. I mean, if you have an op jet, sure. I would much rather have a raise, just because the utility is so much easier to use. You can find you can find a better Raze before you can find a better Jet. I would say Rain is good. Again, not great in comparison. It's very much a solo character, not very good for team scenarios. What else do we have? I'm gonna stop there. Those are my agents. If I see those agents on my team, I'm in a happy place. Orphan, I was late, so not sure if you covered this, but what are your thoughts on scan initiators, Sova, Fade on this map? Uh, Good, not great. There are just things that you get out of other characters that kind of fill those gaps for you. So as a Sova, you get much more info out of this than you do a KO dart, but so rarely do we see people down here that if I knife this back corner, I get the same amount of info. And if there's nobody here with the KO knife, I no longer have to clear this left side of sight. So, same thing with the dart. But if I clear back here, when I was talking about scaling, I no longer have to look left. It makes just scaling the site so much easier. You just clear these corners, assuming this is smoked. You don't have to worry about that. You can jump sight, jump peek around, see that nobody's back sight. Site's free. I don't know if I did cover that. No, I did not. Yeah. So because these are the kind of agent specific things I wanted to get into after the basically. I basically want these to be prompted by questions. I didn't want to get too nitty gritty until people were started asking about them. So thank you for the question. While you guys type, one thing that is also neat, a lot of people don't know this. From here, if you walk or shift over this corner, you do not make noise. Little things about the map like this, super, super important. So if I'm up here and nobody knows I've crossed, maybe they've already taken sight and cleared this section, and then you just walk around. You can now maybe get behind, people defending the bomb and get in for some easy kills while your team walks in. Another question from Orphan. Is it more beneficial for attackers or defenders to break the A link door early? Ooh. This is a question I kind of asked myself, whether or not I would like this door broken. I hate breaking this late round. So I think, as an attacker, this benefits attackers more to be broken early. If I break this as a defender, it's because we're probably stacking a site with defense because they're just rolling over us. So this is kind of a last resort for defense to be breaking this late. Yeah, breaking late really is more of a attacker thing to do. Kind of defense if I'm doing a retake, but it's not as dangerous if you're doing a retake because they have the site. Maybe they're not looking here, and you could be flanking and all that sort of thing. So I think it benefits attackers to have this wall broken. These are my opinions also, so I could be completely wrong. But if I'm a site, my team just got wiped out, and I'm like, oh crap, I need to get out, and this door's still up. I'm like, crap, I'm pinched. If I break the door, they know exactly where I am. You could also, I guess, do that as like a fake sound cue. So you break the door, you make them think you've left, and then you wait for somebody to peek. But yeah, that's just playing mind games at that point. Any other cool questions? Um, and again, this is mostly just for a basic rundown of what to look for first in the map. The things I mainly look for, I went over at the very beginning. Like I said, playing deathmatch on this map is really okay, but it doesn't give you the same sense of first points of contact. You'll get that out of swift play mostly, but these first points are super duper important because these basically just give you crosshair placement of where people are going to be. What else? For lineups and stuff, I've seen some cool stuff with lineups. I'm not going to show a lot of lineups just because I don't really focus on them that much myself. KO knives are pretty straightforward, but there are some cool things you can do. Oh, that didn't go over. You know, you can scan waterfall. That went over. Never mind. You basically can scan waterfall by hitting something in here with Sova. You know, do cool things like that. Basically, trying to clear out the angles that are going to get people looking away from the choke point. So if you are wanting to take sight and you want to throw a dart, my dart would be as high as possible so that as I'm taking the sight after the first tick, you are either looking up at this or I see you. Or I know the angles that you can be in that's not clearing. So if this is clearing back sight and maybe waterfall, I don't necessarily have to look here. I'm looking along this wall because maybe you're hiding from the dart, or I'm looking behind this box and spamming this because that's the last place you could be if you're on the site. And yeah, the things I'm going over are kind of just things to prompt yourself questions. I could look up my own lineups and show you all the lineups right now today, but one, are you going to remember? And two, are there people with better lineups than me? You know, everybody's always thinking up new lineups. The first day I played this map, somebody had a fade lineup that hit up here. I don't know how they did it. Doesn't really matter, but they had a lineup up here. So by the time I'm trying to challenge for this first angle, I'm having to look up and kill the stupid, you know, fade eye, right? So there's just things that people know that will know better than me, but this is mostly just to prompt what to look for, and then once you kind of have an idea of what you like, you can go and YouTube things like specifics. Like, so you're having trouble taking C site, Sova dart for clearing all of C site. Maybe there's something up here that you can do over this wall that you know, is able to fail, is able to get up here and clear the whole site for you. You know, these are things you can look up, but you know, you want to say how to entry with Sova on A, you know, how to defend a push on C, you know, these sorts of things. How you set up defenders on default ABC 3-1-1 or 2-1-2, et cetera, et cetera. Good question. Let's see. How do I like? I normally see solos on C. The reason you see a solo on C is because there's not really a way to get pinched on C site. It is this choke point pretty much, period. And I can kind of go over what I mean by that because I don't know if I really focused on that too much between the sites. C site, you're only getting through here unless they've taken a second site. So on C site, you have one person because there's only one thing happening. Or if you have a sentinel, you might be able to put something like a alarm bot here and completely leave site for retake. You know, the only thing that's happening on C site is you see them get in, the bomb gets planted, and all five are ready to retake on C site. Maybe you do something like that. So typically one on C. You will have two on B to some degree. So maybe one here and either one here or one here. So on B site, you'd have two here, you'd have two here, or you would have two here. So that's kind of how I would treat it. Having basically just split up B, and your second person at B wants to be able to get to A. Your first person at B wants to be able to get quickly to C. Those are things I would look for. And if you're playing one person on C site and two people on B site, that leaves two for A site. Same thing. Your second person on A wants to be able to get to B quickly. Ways you can do that. Basically, you're going to want to play stairs mostly, if I'm being honest, or if I have one on this angle and one holding the tree. Then I'm basically guaranteeing I'm going to have somebody in this room here to kind of hold off the run through. Because if I have two people on site and they smoke this off, they have all of this for free. Do they know that? Maybe not. But if you give enough info early on by shooting or shooting a dart from sight. They see the angle the dart came in. They're like, okay, he's holding here. And then also we heard somebody in tree room. So unless they put three on A, we have a free stairs. Those are kind of things I would look for. So I would look for a 2-2-1. And if I'm playing a sentinel, I'm putting the sentinel on B or C. Sentinel being Sage or Killjoy or Cypher. I've seen a lot of Cypher setups on C, but I still think Sage and Killjoy have the more usable utility throughout the rounds. Any other questions? I think I'm actually running over. DJ, correct me if I'm wrong. I got lost in the sauce. Kagadu, how are you feeling? All right, they might be AFK. Oh, typing. All right. Cannot speak, but great. Okay. Does Kage need permissions to speak in here for the? Is it considered a seminar, or how does the next one run, DJ? We might need to give them. Okay. While we switch over to Kagadu's thing for observing, I appreciate everybody for stopping in. This is going to be recorded and thrown on the YouTube channel for RDV eventually. Hopefully, I answered a lot of questions and given you kind of some things to look for. But crosshair placement is going to be my key takeaway from these, and knowing where the first place you're going to see anybody on the map to hold with your crosshair placement. After you get the first point, the scaling part is the next most important to me. So those are your top two, and thank you all for watching. Make sure you do stick around. We're going to have Kagadu take over. They're going to be going over the next section of how to observe for matches for production. So again, thank you, and introducing Kagadu.